Welcome to the Playing with Power podcast, the podcast where we talk about CEDH, EDH, and Magic the Gathering. I'm your host, Cal.
And I am your host, Alex. And today we're going to be talking about the February Playing with Power tournament, an amazing all-day event we held using the power of the internet last month.
Before we go any further, I wanted to talk quickly about our sponsors. They are TCG Player, Dragon Shield, and Patreon. If you're looking to get cards and you're not going to your local game store, give TCG Player a try for the best prices on the internet. When you receive them, make sure to protect them with Dragon Shield accessories, just like Playing with Power does with our own personal connections. When you receive them, make sure to protect them with Dragon Shield accessories, just like Playing with Power does with our own personal collections. You can even get your very own Playing with Power logo Dragon Shield sleeves on our website right now. After that, take those cards for a spin during our webcam leagues, tournaments, and Patreon days over on Patreon. You get all kinds of benefits for your direct support. Finally, our merchandise store is back. We didn't like the quality of our last store, so we did some research and found a great new provider. The merchandise is much better in our opinion, and we are adding new designs all the time. Check out the podcast descriptions for links to everything mentioned today.
Our Patreon's shout out is Andy Blake. Thank you so much for your patronage. We really appreciate it. And you're awesome. You, Andy Blake.
Thanks, Andy Blake. Yes. And, today on the episode, we're doing something a little bit different than Cal and Alex have done so far on the podcast. We have our very first guest in a very long time. We've got Mikey. Mikey was our TO for this February tournament. He is going to be TOing Monarch Events' Marchesa here at the end of March. And he is also one half of the Miscast. In my opinion, the hottest new CEDH podcast on the block. What's up, Mikey?
Not much. Happy to be here. Great to be a guest on your show. Obviously, I'm very excited to be talking about this. This is an event that's very close to me, as I was the one running it that day. And it was definitely I definitely think there's a lot of cool takeaways from this tournament, where certain things how it was run, as well as the different meta that evolved. And I think there's a lot of takeaways for this, especially with Marchesa coming up this month now. So it's definitely something to look toward, get some data for, and start thinking about what decks you want to bring to that tournament, because there was definitely a lot of interesting things going on here.
Yeah, it was a really interesting tournament. I didn't think it was going to fill up as fast as it did. Yeah, I feel like we opened it up and we're like, okay, we'll see how many people we get. We might, get like 120. We're capped. We capped out.
Yeah, that was something fast. I had to talk to Ryan about, because he's like, I wasn't expecting to get this many people. What should the cap be? I was like, well, where are we at? He's like, 80. I was like, all right, you got to cap it if you're at 80 within 30 minutes of opening up registration. So I was like, 120? That seems fair. It was just ridiculous. Yeah. It was so popular. And then even after it was capped, we had 10 people on a waiting list at any given point.
Yep.
Yeah, it was wild. And for those of you who were unable to go to the tournament or didn't know about the tournament, it was 120 players capped out, Swiss, with 5 rounds. And then after the 5 rounds, we would cut to the top 16. And then they would play for the final pod, which would be 4 players. Really, really cool. It was a long day. Shout out to some of our players, especially our players in Europe, who one of them stayed up for 24 hours. And oh man, what a guy.
I'm always amazed whenever the European people, who always consistently do very well in our tournaments, they really just go for it, ending the day at 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m. local time. They just play through the night. It's crazy.
Yeah, talk about some endurance. 2 of them were in the final 4, and they were, as you said, they were up for over 24 hours. It's insane just being able to play Magic that long and continue playing that well to make it to top 4, let alone one of them ended up winning the tournament. That's very impressive.
Hey, Mikey, that's spoilers. A European winning our tournament? You're spoiling the rest of the podcast, man. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, I'm so sorry. This event happened a week ago and people still haven't heard.
Yeah. One of the interesting things is when I think about playing in tournaments, I don't think about how long a CDH tournament is in comparison to a modern tournament, right? The games just lot of them go to time, man. All of the time. Just, oh God, we hit time and it's like, okay, we're still going to be here for an hour because these last 4 turns are just going to take the longest. Got to go in the tank. But Mikey, okay, so it's the day of the tournament. What was the day like itself for you?
In general, just TOing. This isn't the first time I've TO'd event. It's just you got to buckle up and know it's going to be a long time. And this is something I had to talk to with all of you guys. Honestly, it was like we can have a schedule. We're not going to adhere to that schedule. It's just literally impossible. Because as Hire mentioned, when you go to turns in CEDH, one turn can literally take 40 minutes. And I don't mean like one individual turn, like sometimes that happens, but like one turn cycle can take 40 minutes to an hour just with all the interaction, all the different pieces that are going on, the fact that the board states are so complex. So in general, that was what's going through my mind. I was just like, all right, this is going to be a long day. We're going to be on for about 12 hours at least. Other than that, it's just kind of rolling with the punches, knowing things aren't going to go right, especially with 120 people. Like there's going to be hiccups here and there. There's going to be someone who has an issue. There's going to be some crazy judge call that judges aren't going to fully understand, especially because CDH just leads to so many zany interactions. Like it's insane. Some of the board states that can develop. So really it's just waking up and just having a good attitude and just is like, all right, this is going to be a long day, but it's going to be a good time because I'm surrounded by quality people. And it was great having like you or Cal and Hire both hop into the TO chat every now and then just be like, hey, what's up? Like, that really is what helps get through the day at the end of the day, because there's times where me and like the head judges and such, like we're just kind of at each other's throats. It's like, wow, we're exhausted. This is tiring. So just having some fresh perspectives and just people just help lighten the load, it really makes a mile of difference and really helped us keep going at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was a really long day. I remember jumping in, especially like near the final pods, and being like, "Hey, should we call for like a time call here?" And you're like, "I'm tired."
Hey guys, so like, I have a charity stream that's supposed to be starting in a half hour, and we're still in the semifinals.
Yeah.
Hey, what's going on with that?
Yeah, that must have been the logistics of that. So like in the beginning, did you notice a time like, okay, you're running the tournament, right? And was there like, oh man, this tournament's like behind, or well, we're running into some time barriers here? That
happened throughout the day, to be honest. Like the first after the first round, I think that game those games that went to time weren't resolved for almost an hour. Like we went an hour over, and that's where it was just like, all right, great start to the day. Right after that, it was a lot more of me like getting judges to be like, all right, you're sitting in these rounds once they go to time. You are watching them. You're going to make sure there's no slow play going on, making sure things keep moving. But that's definitely just like the biggest thing going through my head at all the tournaments that I've run. It's just always, the games that go to time, they're going to run late. And it's always very stressful, especially knowing that there's other activities that are going on. And especially when people are in all these different time zones and things. So that's definitely was the thing most in the back of my mind. It's like, okay, cool. Round one, we're already super behind. This is a great start to the day. Can't wait till we get to that finals pod. But like I said, I wake up, I just know these things are going to happen. And I just try to keep a good attitude about it, just keep things going. Because as soon as with being a TO, like the hardest thing is just keeping your cool at all times. And I feel like I'm pretty good at doing that. And you just need to stay calm, make sure everyone else feels like things are going well. And then generally things work out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know, man. Some of those games were wild. They were like, oh my god, those board states. Holy smokes.
I don't know. I don't know how judges or anyone else handles it. I just don't get it. Personally.
Yeah, it's not easy. That's why there's not many people willing to TO events at the end of the day, I feel.
Yeah, that was definitely the length of it. I know was definitely a little bit of a victim of how many people we had, because we were originally planning on, we were like 4 rounds, cut to top 16. That's easy. That's simple. Fast cut, easy peasy. And then it was like, wait a second. No, we have to do 5 rounds.
Yeah, that was something leading into the event, because I know Ryan talked about how he wanted to do 4 rounds. I was like, with this many people, you can't do 4 rounds. There's too many ties, way too many tiebreakers get impact the bracket. Like you need 5 rounds. And even then, there's still a lot of ties. Like, for instance, top 16, there are people who had the same record as other people in top 16. I think like 3 wins and 2 losses or something along those lines. They didn't make it. So at the end of the day, like it's already hard enough with 5 rounds with this many people, but 4 rounds is just ridiculous. It's just like luck of the draw at that point if you make it.
Yeah. So, in regards to like the entirety of the tournament, we saw a lot of players who play with like on the Playing with Power server, and we saw some reflection of like what we have in terms of metagames in the server, but we also saw some not server things happen. Right?
I had nothing to do with that, I promise.
Not server things happen.
I don't believe you.
So I would say that like one of the things that the meta was surprisingly mid-range. What do you think? I don't know. This is observations.
Yeah. So I feel like a lot of the meta was pretty mid-range, but I think at the end of the day, that's just what you need to do in CEDH. Like, I don't think that decks that all they want to do is sit down and go super fast are going to win every game. Because if you're trying to win every game turn 2, that's just not feasible. And I know this is something that a lot of people disagree with me on, but I don't really feel like Stacks is very great right now. I think Winota is the one exception to that because they have such a fast clock. And I think Heliod also has the advantage where you have an A+B in the command zone, which just makes it so that's pretty resilient. But I think if you try to go to the extremes of the spectrum, you're just not putting yourself in a winning position because you need to be able to do both things. And I think mid-range is what lives in that realm where you're able to go pretty fast in some games, but you're also fine sitting and grinding value when it needs to come. So that's why like Thrasios decks were very prevalent. Hire's seen this with Kinnan because it's like if the game goes, he can play fast. Like if he gets out an early Nyx formation, he just wins. But at the same time, he's just chill. I have 8 mana on board, Kinnan activation, Kinnan activation, Kinnan activation. Like eventually you just overwhelm the board. So I think you need to be able to do both those types of play styles, and you can't go overly reactive, and you also can't go overly proactive to be successful in tournaments.
Yeah, there's a lot of I talked to a few players about it, and they were really surprised to see the amount of mid-range coming out of the tournament. A lot of people thought there was going to be a lot of stacks.
Yeah, I do know the Playing with Power server has a bit of a reputation for every single one of your pickup games. If you're looking for games in the Playing with Power server, you might accidentally end up in a pod with 2 to 4 stacks decks.
And let me tell you, playing in a pod with 2 mono white stacks decks is the hardest thing in the world as a recent experience. But like I also think, I don't know, there's just like when it comes to mid-range in this tournament, I think it just did so well. Like if you're able to find the grind engines, you were just in a world of love and happiness. Like I don't know, man. I don't know. It was cool. What about you, Mikey? What do you think?
I mean, yeah, that's why I think mid-range is just the place to be. Like, I can point a lot of similarities to like my Armix Cromless. Like, sure, it can jam Nas turn 2, turn 3, but I'm also fine just sitting there playing the late game and jamming a Wandering Archaic on turn 4. And I think that's just where the decks need to be to adapt to this meta. I don't think going all in on stacks is smart because eventually people will just get out their value engines, as you said. They'll get out their Thrasioses, their SIGs, their insert draw engine here, Ristic Study. It doesn't matter. Like, eventually you're able to sculpt your hand and deal with the stacks. And then turbo players, sure, you're able to get those cheeky turn 1, turn 2 wins every now and then. But in reality, when you're playing in a tournament, people are playing to win. They're going to mull to early interaction when they see a turbo deck, or they're just ready to stop that turn 2 win. So you need to be able to play the long game, but also be able to threaten wins early. And I just think that's where mid-range thrives right now. And you don't have to... I think the biggest misconception is when people think of mid-range, at least a year ago, they thought that means you're going land, dork, pass, turn 2, land, dork, turn 3 Thrasios, turn 4 you have a Thrasios activation. That was great during the days of Flash Hulk. But now mid-range can just mean you get out your turn 1 Thrasios, but you also have a Mana Crypt in play and an Arcane Signet, and you got a turn 2 Thrasios activation, so you're holding up interaction and you have card draw. And I think that's how people need to start to view mid-range, where it's just value. You can play the long game, but you need to develop your board early. I think it's kind of archaic to think turn 1 land dork pass is still acceptable if you're trying to actually go to a tournament and win.
Yeah, I really like the idea of like turn 1 Thrasios into turn 2 activation with the ability to hold interaction up. I think the mid-range idea of you have mid range way back here, right? You have mid range in the turn 4. You're doing stuff. The mid range is turn 2 now.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's mid range. That's insane. That's insane to think about, right? We're just it's so fast. It's the format has too many good cards. People like to say CEDH, there's too many good cards. But like it allows you to do that. It allows you to set up really bonkers board states turn 2, and like I remember I looked at a couple board states during the tournament and like I wasn't paying attention. I just jumped in a game just to see where we were at, and I was like, oh, what turn are we on? Turn 1.
Yeah, exactly.
This is turn 1. I could have sworn I saw like 5 lands. No, they're all artifacts. Wow. Okay. Wow, there's so many things. This is intense. Whoever taps first. Yeah, I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, it has really felt like there has been a shift over the last year or so towards more and more people figuring out that, almost exactly like Mikey was saying, mid-range doesn't have to be play your dork, pass, very slowly develop your board. Ooh, I have a heuristic study on turn 4. Isn't that exciting? Kind of action, which is slow and grindy and fun, but we have so many great explosive cards that can do so many flexible things at different states in the game. Like, Jessica's Will, it's great to win the game with, or it's also great to just power out another value play if you needed to. Not the ideal situation, but same with Dockside, it could be a great value play, or it can just simply win you the game on the spot. But I think with all these thoughts about mid-range, guys, we should just expect to see 16 blue farms in the top 16, right?
Yeah, that's something Drake and I actually talked about on Miscast last week. While both him and I do think Blue Farm is the best deck right now, and it's mostly just because you have 2 phenomenal draw engines in the command zone, you just run into the issue where people view it as the best deck, so they don't necessarily want to play it. They try to tech their deck to beat it. And then it's like, well, how do you beat a mid-range pile? And that's a weird question to ask. And it's like the way you beat a good mid-range pile is just by playing the best cards. And I think people just need to be a little bit more critical of their own card quality when making their lists. And I also think you need to look at your mulligan decisions more. And that's also why mid-range can be more explosive now, because people seem to forget that you get a free second 7. Like, people seem to criticize me because they're like, wow, like, how do you have these fast starts all the time? You had like land, soul ring, and another rock. And it's like, well, I also mulled to 5 cards.
Yeah, so I mulled to 5 cards and looked at, 7, 14, 21. I got to look at 28 cards before I kept my 5 cards. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And I think people just need to start doing that more aggressively. And I think that really showed in the people that made top 16 of the event at Playing with Power. Like, not all of them are keeping first 7s. Sometimes you got to go down to 5 cards. I'm not saying you want to do that every game, obviously, but you can't be satisfied with average 7s when a good 5 is better than an average 7 in a lot of cases.
Yeah, 100%. There's a lot. When I think about Blue Farm, especially in like metas, a lot of people have played Blue Farm at one point or another, and like it's literally good cards deck. And
yeah, it really is what you would think of as like the generic CEDH deck.
Yeah, if you want to think of generic, like, oh, what's CEDH? Blue Farm. It's Blue Farm. That's what. If you want to like the most.
You have your 2 really strong partners, and you've got all of your blue interaction, and you've got your Dockside Extortionist, and you've got Thoracle Consult. What else could you need?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's also one of those decks that. So like when I think about other turbo decks, they have to play like weird cards. Not weird. They have to play cards that aren't the best in order to do the things that they want to do. They might be faster. Like, I don't think Blue Farm's the fastest turbo deck, but I think it's the most consistent, right? Like,
yeah, I agree with that.
I'm going to draw cards. I don't care what you say. It's going to happen, whether you like it or not. And so I think when people don't want to play Blue Farm, it's just because they've played it, and it's when you click that add CDH staples, it literally makes Blue Farm. Like, if you're in those colors, it will make Blue Farm. There's no spice. It's very generic CDH stuff, and that's not bad. It's just you probably don't want to play it because you've played it a million times. and that's perfectly fine. However, you need to be prepared to have, like Mikey said, prepare decks that have card quality that are as equal or as close to equal as possible, and that can be really hard when you don't have access to those colors or those cards.
Did Blue Farm make it to top 16? Did Blue Farm not make it to top 16? I don't know. You'll have to find out after you listen to this excellent ad break that keeps us employed. Looking to pick up some fun CEDH merch that also supports our channel? Check out our store. We have a variety of clothing designs and have more to come soon, like Playing with Power deck sleeves. If you want to play some Magic with us IRL, you're in luck. Members of Playing with Power will be attending both Marchesa, where we'll be playing in the CEDH main event, and Star City Games Indianapolis, where we'll be recording games for the channel all weekend. We can't wait to see ya. And welcome back to the Playing with Power podcast. Cal and Alex here, still with T.O. Mikey. We're going to chat a little bit about the makeup of the top 16 from the Playing with Power tournament. And we're also going to delve into the top 4 deck lists a bit, chat about the decks a little bit more in detail, and talk about what you could possibly actually, what kind of conclusions you could actually draw from this tournament.
So let's talk about the outliers, shall we? One of the outliers is Blue Farm. Yeah, Blue Farm did make it into the top 16. Only one Blue Farm list, which to me is surprising. I thought there'd be more Blue Farm, honestly, or at least Tim Necrom variants.
Always do.
Right? Like anything. I'm down for Tim Necrom, but it's I like running weird stuff with Tim Necrom, which is part of the course. Let's see. Is there anything from the top 16, Cal, that you thought was particularly unique?
There's a lot of stuff that I would expect to see. Two things. Well, one thing that I especially love to see, love seeing Kirik. I don't know how I'm actually supposed to pronounce that word. Love seeing that deck hit our top 16. I know there's some very talented pilots out there playing the deck. I know Fonzie in particular has really been tearing up the Playing with Power leagues with it over our last few league seasons. An outlier here to me is definitely good old Yasan. Not a deck I would expect to see in a CEDH tournament top 16 at all. Used to be the de facto, hey, you're trying to build a CEDH list for $500 and under, you can build Yasan. And if you ever can afford a Gaia's Cradle, that'll be really nice in it too. Very interesting to see a mono green deck of all things, and kind of a very classic mono green deck make the top 16.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Yisan's definitely one of those OG decks where that was good 5 years ago, and honestly, I still think it's good today. People like to make fun of it and stuff, but that deck just does its thing. It's a toolbox with answers to literally everything. It's a lot of graveyard central decks get Scoos. Maybe you don't go for Priesthood Titania early. There's just so many options, and it kind of bothers me that so many people underrate this deck. It just does work, and Hires knows I'm very critical of a lot of monocolored decks, and I think it speaks volumes that I think so highly of Yisan to this day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think, and this is just an opinion that I formed recently, any green deck that's on Ashaya, I think is very strong right now. I think Ashaya is just so bonkers. The fact that it gives everything hexproof essentially is
Cycryph doesn't work. What do you do? They have a million creatures.
Yeah. Oh, you're trying to bounce this card that says specifically non-land permanent? Oh yeah, you just get hexproof. Oh, that's brutal. You have to deal with the Ashaya, and it's so good. And Yisan just does that. It does it really, really well. And the fact that you can tutor up half of your combo with your first verse is just so good. And if you don't know Yisan is a 3 CMC commander. It says tap it, add a verse counter to it, and search your library for a creature with converted mana cost equal to the amount of verse counters on Yisan. And like that ability, you go and search for your 1 mana untapper, and then from there you just find things that you need. Oh, I need to find a Phyrexian Revoker because you can't activate Thrasios. Like, it's so good. It's so good.
Yeah, you also can find oof off of it onto, like, there's just, when your deck is a toolbox, it's just insane. Like, you just play answers to everything. You don't need them every game, but when you do need them, you find them, and that's just so powerful.
Really, really, really good.
Any other standouts to the two of you?
I have a couple. One, as I pointed out earlier, I don't feel like Stacks is very good right now other than Winota, and the only dedicated Stacks deck that made it is Winota, which I think speaks volumes to that. She's able to just close games out. It's one of those things, if you don't have the Psych Rift or the Toxic Deluge or the Dress Down, Winota just wins. And if they happen to drop an early Aven Mind Sensor or something, or find that off of an early Winota activation, you're kind of just done. Like, you have to draw into it naturally, and that's just so hard in a lot of games. Like, it's just something that gets out of control very quickly, and that's why Ian named the original deck Winota Snowball, because once it gets going, it's hard to stop. And the other thing that stands out to me is Korvold. Not because I think that Korvold is a bad deck by any means, it's just the person who made top 16 with Korvold was on the Food Chain variant, which multiple people consider to be outdated. I also agree with that sentiment, to be completely honest, but I do think it just shows that, like, a lot of these cards that, myself included, is kind of overripe, such as Food Chain, they're still good. They're still powerful. They still do its thing. They might not be the most quote unquote optimal. I did a lot of big air quotes right there, but they still work. And if you are comfortable on a deck, even if someone tells you that it's outdated or something, keep playing it. And that's kind of in line with the Yisan thing. Like, so many people are going to be like, oh, Yisan, that's so like 2016, blah, 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 blah. The deck still can do things. It's still very powerful, and you need to respect it. And if you don't respect it, the deck gets out of control. If you don't kill Yisan early, you're just dead. Like, that's why I build Armix, to deal with these types of decks.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't see an Armix Crom list, and I was so sad because I needed that in my life. If you haven't seen this deck, it's silly. I expected to see Winota. I really like Carrick. It is just, it's so good. It's such a good list. I love the ability to win through every Stacks piece. Like, what do you got for me? I don't care. I'm gonna beat you. I'm sorry. I'm gonna win. I love that. I love that deck a lot. I didn't think outside of that, I saw a lot. There was a lot of like Timna Thrasios variants. There was a lot of, I think there was a Krark Sakashima.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was Hal. Let's go.
Yeah, Hal. Shout out to Helenium. But yeah, let's talk about the top four. Let's talk about the top four,
the big potatoes.
Speaking of top four, Hal did make it to the top four with Krark Sakashima. Oh man, what a list!
Yeah, already very quickly becoming kind of a tournament mainstay deck. It's been a hot minute since I've seen a CEDH tournament where there hasn't been some variety of Krark and usually Sakashima in the top 16 or the top 4, that kind of stuff. It's just such an odd deck to interact with, such a weird pile. Of course, the secret is to just kill Krark. However, that is not so easily done.
Yeah, it's also, you need to kill Krark, but it's also like one Krark, not the end of the world. Like, they can definitely win out of nowhere.
For sure.
But I see one Krark on board, and I'm not too concerned. 2 Krarks, you're dead.
Game over.
It does. Yeah, if they have a single cantrip in hand, you're basically dead. And I know that might sound like an exaggeration, but it really isn't. And it's just wild. Like, one cantrip or like one ritual, and like, or even just like a Juska's Will in hand with 2 Krarks in play, you're probably winning that game. Mm-hmm. It's just bonkers, and it's so hard to interact with, all the Krark triggers and things. It's just so weird, because it's just one of those decks where you always have to perpetually respect it, even if they have one card in hand. Because if that one card, as I said, is a Juska's Will, a cantrip, or a tutor to find one of those cards, you're done. And it's so weird and annoying to play against because, like, you see, like, oh, this person has Krark, they're about to untap, they can tap Shakashima, they have 6 cards in hand, versus you're staring down like a Drannith Magistrate, a Dothi Voidwalker, you know, something that seems more threatening. And it's like, you have to just kill the Krark sometimes, and it's wild. It's such a guessing game, and even Krark players don't know when they're going to win, because sometimes you just get unlucky and you get screwed over by coin flips. But you have to respect the fact that they can just untap and win, and it's so frustrating. Like, I have lost so many games to Krark where it's just... they had one card in hand, and that was the one card they needed, and it's like, like, get better.
It was Gataxian Probe.
Exactly, that's what I mean. It's just like all these unsuspecting cards, and there's so many of them in the deck, and you just die. And it's like one of the most frustrating decks for me to play against, is because I'm someone who likes to think about things very rationally. So it's like, I see the onboard Drannith, Dothi, insert other threat here, like I said, but you have to just play around what Krark might have in hand. And because even if it's just a cantrip, spooky, they have a ponder, you're still just dead. And it's so difficult to properly threat assess that deck. And that's just the power of it, because you never know when they're about to win, and you never know when they have nothing, because sometimes they just flop, because sometimes they cast that ponder, they lose both flips, and then you're done. So it's just so weird. And it speaks volumes to its power. Like, it's not something like Cody where you know what's happening. You just kind of have to sit along for the ride, and sometimes just cross your fingers and pray that you're not dead. Yeah,
it's definitely the most like let chaos reign kind of deck there is. So I play against a lot of Krark Sakashima decks, and my answer is always Lurking Predators. Always. Like, it's like, oh, Krark Sakashima, I'm literally mulliganing until I can get a Lurking Predators, or a way to get Lurking Predators into hand. And even with Lurking Predators on the battlefield, I've lost. I'm like, this is insane. Like, you have to cast spells to win. This card is supposed to stop you from doing that. And, like, they don't care. Like, oh, Void Winnower? Don't care. What is that? Is that another card that... Oh, nope, don't care. I'm going to cast all the spells still. I'm going to have 1 billion copies, and then you're going to die because of, I don't know, Grape Shot. Like, it's like, oh, God. So annoying of a card.
What is Alex to do if there is no Void... If Void Winnower cannot help him now?
Yeah, if Void Winnower can't help me, like... It's just, oh God, it's so frustrating.
Beats all of my decks.
Exactly.
Yeah, Krark Sakashima does not care. Yeah, that deck is really cool. Shout out to Hal. The next deck was what? Yes. Listen, Tymna Thrasios Hulk is. It's so good. Listen, shout out to Ashani, aka Jamaican dude, playing this Thrasios Hulk list. Hate bears that win. Oh gosh, what are y'all thoughts? Because I have a lot of them on this deck.
I have a lot of thoughts too. As someone who practices with Ashani a lot, I feel like a fool because going into the tournament, I was telling him to play Tymna Thrasios Hermit Druid, and he was just like, no. Like, so many people are running removal. Everyone has bounce spells. I think I should do Hulk. And I was like, what are you doing? And then he just sweeps through the tournament. And even when practicing before the tournament, I just die to this list all the time. It's so hard to interact with. If he has an onboard sack outlet, I'm just like, we're dead. Like, the amount of times that I've killed his Viscerous here with Armix, which just feels terrible when I'm looking at Tymnas and Kroms and all this other stuff on the battlefield. But I was like, I know if I don't kill that Viscerous here, we're dead. And it's so terrifying. Like, it's able to win out of nowhere. It has so many one-card tutors that get there. Like, I am... mad props to him because this list is not hard. It's not easy to play. And I thought Hulk was kind of like more or less dead when Flash got banned. Like, I knew like there were Hulk piles. Like, Minx is good. There's been a lot of like Sans Blue Hulk decks, but he really changed my entire opinion on this list. Like, it's this crazy resilient, wins out of nowhere. The amount of Entombs I Force of Willed and still lost the game, like it's crazy. Like, I don't know. I have no other words to say. Like, this list is just insane. It's very hard to play, but if you're as good as Ashani with Hulk stuff, you're gonna get wins just because the list is that ridiculous.
I think I'll go next. I have less thoughts about this list than I'm sure Alex does, so I'll just pop in here. I think incidentally, by playing a Hulk deck, I think you do kind of gain an advantage in these kind of situations if you really know what you're doing and your opponents don't. There has been a massive gain in popularity in CEDH, I think, since the banning of Flash. I think a lot of people that we play CEDH with today simply never really played in the Flash Hulk meta. A lot of people don't 100% know how all of this Protein Hulk stuff works, how to best interact with you, what cards they actually care about and stuff. It's like, what's Pattern of Rebirth do? I don't know. Do I care about that? I guess not. Oh, I lost the game. Oh well. What's that? Was that some bulk rare from Eternal Masters? Okay, whatever. No. But yeah, no, I love this list. It's awesome. Every single time I look at it, I just find like some other zany creature in here that I can't actually figure out why it's in here. It's just Body Snatcher. But I know I there's a lot of crazy stuff you can do with Body Snatcher. Body Snatcher is insane. But Alex, tell me how you feel about Hate Bears That Win.
Hate Bears That Win. So good. There's a lot of lines in here that are innocuous. Ashani loves to do turn 1 Carrying Feeder. Like, turn 1 Viserys here. You're like, okay, great turn 1, bro. And then, like, his turn 2, he'll like, oh, I'm going to play this Academy Rector. And you don't have a removal for the Viserys here. And you don't have you don't have, like, counter magic for, and you're like, oh, wait. You just win. Like, you just win. You just get Pattern of Rebirth, and then you get like you're just oh my god, I hate it. So like in this deck, there are a lot of really, really cool techie cards like Volrath's Shapeshifter. It's an insane card.
All-star. That has gotten me so many times.
That card all the time. It gets me all the time. Let's see. I love the Cephalid Illusionist combo that it has with Lightning Greaves. Is he still on Lightning Greaves?
I don't believe he's on Lightning Greaves. It's just that's part of the Hulk pile. You do. It's just like the old Flash Hulk pile. Cephalid Illusionist, Nomad Encore, Oracle.
Oh no, he doesn't.
And then it's also not. Yeah, and then it's just not that hard to manually assemble or use your Eldritch Evolution to get one of the missing A's to the B and such. And sometimes he just manually kills you with Cephalid Illusionist and that. And it's just like, what? What just happened?
What just happened? Yeah.
How
this deck
did we just die?
How did we just die? Yeah, I've put Ashani into a lot of puzzles, like where I'll have like a certain amount of stacks pieces on board and be like, all right, try to win through this big boy. And he figures it out every time. Like literally every time. And it's so annoying. Like, don't give Sean time.
Playing with him, I've learned the most through playing with him. Just because he sees all these weird lines I've never thought of. Because like I understand Hulk, like I understand the piles, and it's like there's no way you win here. And then he wins under an op agent somehow. I'm like, well, okay, how's that possible? What did you just do? And I was like, oh, Volrath Shapeshifter shenanigans, great. He saw the line and I didn't. Like it's so humbling. Like every time I play with him, I feel like I'm learning something because it's just like, wow, you're just better at this game than me, and I'm not going to catch up. I keep trying, and I'm just not.
Yeah, he's done really well. He top 10s pretty much every tournament that he gets into. He's a really, really strong player. So shout out to this list. And if you don't know of the like ultimate Hulk pile list, it's Nomad's Encore, Cephalid Illusionist, and Thassa's Oracle. Those cards interact with each other in a way that's really interesting because you just use Nomad's Encore to target Cephalid Illusionist. Cephalid Illusionist will mill you with the Thassa's Oracle ETB on the stack, allowing you to mill your deck for free. And it's like, unless you have Split Second, you can't really interact with this combo at all. And then guess what? You win the game. Super strong deck. I love this deck. This deck is probably one of my favorites in the top 4.
Yeah, this is definitely the most unique, I feel, of the top 4. And I'm just glad that I was able to be around to help him practice on this deck. And I'm glad he didn't listen to me and play Hermit Druid, because I definitely think that this is the stronger list 100% after seeing it played more.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Moving on, we've got Veyron with, man, I think probably something I probably could have called out on the top 16, but we left it for the top 4. It's Jessica Thrice Reborn in Ishai Ochitai Dragon Speaker. Good old one shot the entire table dot tribal, I guess. Yeah, so this is definitely the kind of deck that I wouldn't personally anticipate seeing in the finals of an event. Just because it's weird. A lot of the times you're killing people with a Shy, since Jessica can triple a Shy's damage and just commander people damage out of the game. A lot of the ways it can win outside of a Shy are weird and take way too much giga braining for me. I mean, it's just it's a tough list to pilot from all things that I've heard from people. I mean, you play it, you come to a river.
Yeah,
wild.
You do play You Come to a River, which is pretty wild.
Yeah. I think I disagree with, I don't think this list is particularly hard to pilot. It's just, so you have like a win con in the command zone. Being a Shy just beats. Like sometimes that just gets there. Other than that, you're just playing a really solid Jessica pile. Like it's, at the end of the day, it's a Breach deck. And Breach, in my opinion, people can feel free to disagree with me. I think that's just the most powerful card in the format right now. So you're playing a deck where you have...
That's my problem, Mikey. I'm incapable of stringing together any Underworld Breach win. So,
well, yeah, that's what happens when your Mox Ruby submission doesn't have an LED in it, but this list does play LED, so it's fine. Because you have
fired. He fell out of his chair. You can't see him. You can't see him right now, but he fell out of his chair. Literally. Oh my god.
Yeah, so like you have a Shy that you always can lean back on as a win con. Other than that, it's just control elements until you find your Breach combo. Like I'm not saying like it's not hard to play or it's not easy to play control stuff. It's just I think the game plan's very linear and I don't think it's very complicated. And I think part of the reason Veyron might have played this list is because he was expecting a lot of stacks, because a Shy just kills the stacks matchup. Like you just turn sideways, delete. Cool. There's 6 rule of loss in place. I don't care. You can't block my bird. So I just think it's like a solid list that people kind of have been underrating, because at the end of the day, if you're able to assemble Breach in any reasonable time frame, which this deck can, because it's very easy to find your intuition when you're in blue, and enchantments are also easy to find because you have white. I just think the list is just a slam dunk. It's just pretty easy to play. Fits a niche. You can kill them with combat damage right away. Yeah, I think it was a smart meta call, and I think it's just a list people sleep on. Like, people don't like to talk about Jessica for whatever reason, or just Kai for whatever reason, and I think Veyron kind of proved that wrong, where it's just like, this deck can definitely hold its own weight.
I think in the top 4 commentary, I did joke that a lot of people simply forgot about this list once, like, Nathan, the Hermit Druid, stopped tweeting about it 10 times a day. It's like kind of a joke, and it's also kind of true.
Oh yeah, fair. I really like Ishai Jessica. When this commander was and like initially came out, I was like, oh man, you could do some really cool stuff. And I made like a stacks version of this, and yeah, you just get there. You just cast a turn 1 Ishai, and then you're like, all right, who's gonna be the 7 spells? Give them to me, because I'm gonna cast Jessica and start deleting people. There's a lot of really good cards in here. The one card I think is really interesting in here is Hullbreaker Horror. In decks that you are literally hard casting him, just blow my mind. Like, absolutely blow my mind. There's no Neoform, there's no Eldritch Evolution.
Yeah, that was something that kind of stood out to me, but once I took like a second look at the list, I was like, oh my god, this is genius. You're already trying to play the control game where you leave a lot of mana, and Hullbreaker Horror is flash and uncounterable. On top of that, Jessica's an infinite mana sink that people like to forget about. So it's not hard to do the bouncing rocks an infinite amount of times, make mana, and just kill people with Jessica. I was like, wow, that is such a smart include. Because it's not just there for value, and even if you just cast it for value, it's not even the worst. Like, he has built-in protection, because if you have any instant in your hand, you just can bounce their spell. It can bounce board states, and then it also is like, oh, you have an Ashai blocker? You thought, here's a Ponder. Now you don't have your Crom anymore, and Ashai kills you. Like, I thought that was such a smart include that I haven't seen any other Jessica Ashai list, and I think it's just correct to run it, to be honest.
I think that there's a world that you, instead of running maybe Teferi, you run Luca as the planeswalker that can turn your Ishai
polymorph
into
a few times.
that can that can polymorph your Ishai into Hullbreaker Horror.
If you're lucky.
No, it's
does
higher
Luca care
CMC.
about CMC? Never mind.
Yeah,
Ignore
yeah,
me.
it's higher.
Ignore me.
It's higher than. Yeah,
I didn't play that standard.
It's for Ishai, it's just Eldritch Evolution, or if you have a 3-drop, because I don't think there's any 4-drops in the deck. No, there's not. It turns any 3-drop into Hullbreaker Horror too.
I definitely think that's an interesting way to take the deck. I would need to think about it more, but like, yeah, no, that kind of makes sense. And then you can even lean harder into the control element, like the Roger Thrasios lists are, where it's literally just interaction, polymorph effects, and your commanders, and that deck just works too for the similar reason. So I can see that, and then you have the benefit of Ishai just deleting people. Yeah, I actually kind of like that idea. I think that's something worth exploring.
Yeah, Veyron, take.
Yeah, Veyron. Nice job making the top 4.
You didn't win the tournament, so
this list could be
take a
better.
note from us.
If you just had Luca, good night. Ugh. All right, sorry. Veyron, great job in the tournament, buddy. I'm going to shout out his politicking skills. He was throwing it down in the games. We saw some long conversations. Really, really, really good. What's our last list? Our last list is the winner of.
Does anybody know this guy?
I don't know. Some guy from Europe.
All I know is that he honks a lot. He flies in V's. I don't know, man. He attacked me as a kid long ago because I had some bread. I was eating a sandwich. It was nuts.
Coming in first place for the Playing with Power February tournament is Gustav, everybody's favorite CEDH grinder. He brought Thrasios Vile Smasher to this tournament. And it's not 4-color control. It's a Thoracle focused deck that's hard to interact with, can play through a lot of common stacks, and has a few different really interesting ways to win the game. Most notably through like Divining Wish. That's a cool card, right?
Yeah.
Divining Witch, but Mikey, I know that you and Drake talked about this pretty extensively on miscasts already, but there is some very interesting tech in this deck that shows that that Gustav, as a very common player in the Playing with Power Discord, was expecting a lot of stacks at this tournament, like Aether Vial.
Yeah, he made this deck literally to play around Rule of Law, and that's why he was running Divining Witch. That's why he has Fiend Artisan, Pod, etc. Because it was all about, I only need to cast one spell, because if I can just get to my Oracle or Lab Man, I just need to cast the Consult or Tainted Pack, whatever. So he was really trying to get around that. Same thing with the Hermit Druid pile, right? Like you mill your library, and then your one spell is the Dread Return to get your Oracle back. So he was really trying to metagame with that. And I mean, obviously it worked out for him. And I'm just really proud of him from this. Like, he's someone who, I was there when he was like doing earlier deck builds and stuff. And I was just like, Gustav, like, you got to try harder, bud. And this list, he put it together literally like a night or two before the tournament. He posted it in a Discord I'm in, and no one really paid attention to it. As Drake said, it was like, oh, it's a Gustav pile. It's either like really good or really bad. Who knows? We'll find out, I guess. But we're not looking at this because he posted it really late, and no one wants to read it right now. And looking at it, I was like, yeah, this was the perfect answer to the Playing with Power meta. If you're expecting a lot of Rule of Law and stacks, like obviously that's not exactly how the tournament turned out. But it's really great to see his progress and see like this is what he was able to come up with on his own, because he literally did this on his own, no consulting, no practicing or testing the deck. He threw it together 2 nights before the tournament, played it, and then ended up winning the tournament. And I think that's very impressive in itself. And it just speaks volumes to he knew what he was going to be playing against. And once again, this is a list that can go fast or slow. Like, it's fine. Like, I can play stacks all day. Like, I'll just keep potting for value or get there eventually, but I also can just Hermit Druid and kill you turn 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like this list. It's a lot of smart includes, especially if you're expecting Rule of Laws, but also plays really well into a mid-range. You do have Thrasios. He didn't lean on Vile Smasher at all. He was just like, I just need this for the colors. And I am also I can't believe I didn't realize this earlier, but Aether Vial, this is 2 out of the 4 decks in the final 4 had Aether Vial in it for the reason of trying to tech against Rule of Law. And I really like that Gustav included these. I like the inclusion of Birthing Pod, Artisan Fiend, like all of these cards really, really good. And I love the fact that he has Mnemonic Betrayal in case like he just needs a different way to win.
He gets that from me. I'm taking credit for that one.
It's a good card. It's a good card. Yeah, a lot of really good things. You know, Divining Witch is. I think that card is. It's hard for me to get behind it, but it works. It works. It's a spell you don't have to cast. You can hold your interaction. Love that. Love that. Great build. Great build, Gustav. Good win.
Yeah, and something Drake and I talked about with Aether Vial, which I think I was very low on this card, and then I sat down and thought about it more after seeing the top 4 list. It's kind of insane. You just let Aether Vial sit at 2, and then you're threatening a Dockside, you're threatening an Oracle, you're threatening a Gilded Drake, you're threatening a Divining Witch. Like, there are so many threats on 2 where you don't need to be using it every turn. But now it's kind of the back in the Flash days. If it's on 2, there's a chance you just win at instant speed. And now you only need 1 black mana up or a black and a colorless up if you're using Tainted Pact versus Consult. And that's kind of terrifying. And it's something you need to respect. Like, if they have any amount of cards in their hand, there's a chance they just win. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even think about it that way until after I saw these tournament results. And it's like, oh my God, that's nuts. Even if you have nothing in hand, as long as you have cards, they could literally all be lands. If you have an Aether Vial on 2, I'm now going to be looking at boards and seeing that and being like, there's a chance they win at instant speed. And you're right. I'm going to be wrong like 8 times out of 10, but you still need to respect it because there's still the chance that happens. And if you're not playing around that type of thing, then that's the kind of thing that separates like good from bad Magic players. And that's just nuts. And I think it's kind of crazy that no one's really thought about that in CDH before. And it's just so powerful. Like, even if you're just cheating a Dockside, it's like, oh, I have no mana up. Here's a Dockside. Here's a hard cast Forcible, so I have 1 card in hand. Like, these are all things now that if I see Aether Vial, I'm going to have to think about playing around. And I think that just speaks volumes to this card being underplayed, in all honesty, even if you have not a ton of creatures.
Mm-hmm. And how the deck plays against, like it can play on the stack, which is really cool. It's like, oh, there's a, Gilded Drake on the stack. Not even Gilded Drake. Gilded Drake ETB on the stack. And then you put out your own Gilded Drake. Like, let me steal your Gilded Drake before you try stealing my thing. Or let me steal back my thing. So we both have Gilded Drakes now. Or it's just like, it's crazy. I really like that.
Yeah, or Dothy in response to a wheel. Like, there's so many implications. Like, being on 2, it's crazy. Like, I never thought about it. Like, which is nuts because it's like counterbalance on 2. Like, that's something that's always in my head. Like, yeah, that's like the most powerful number to be on top of your deck if you have a counterbalance. And now it's like, oh shit, Aether Vial on 2. We could just be dead. I can't cast my wheel even though I only have 1 card in hand. That's a Wheel of Fortune. Like, I think it's just nuts, and it's really made me change the way I play games now if I see an Aether Vial. Granted, I haven't seen it much. There's not many people using it, but like, these are all the things that are going to be going through my head on top of the 1,000,000 other things you need to think about with CEDH. And I'm not looking forward to that because there's just so much more costs or opportunity versus risk scenarios that are going to be running through my mind. And this game's already hard enough, and now I have to play through all these chances too.
Yeah, it's fair. Big fair. Awesome. Congratulations, Gustav, for taking that win. Amazing. Up 24 hours, this guy. Absolute beast.
So we had this massive tournament. We have this top 16 full of awesome decks and great players. Obviously, we have this top 4 with some spice in it, also great players. But can we actually draw any conclusions from this? Can we draw conclusions from CEDH tournament results? We're running a little long on time, so I'm just going to say my little piece on it, which is really short, and then I would love to hear both of your thoughts, and then we're just going to wrap it up for the day. Personally, I think my personal answer is no. Blue Farm has never won a CEDH tournament is like a meme for a reason, because in such a variance-filled format in such a variance-filled game in just one incredibly small sample size, I think it's like we can't draw any meaningful conclusions from that. What we can draw conclusions from is like over a very long period of time, over several tournaments or a lot of tournaments and leagues and other such events. I think if we keep consistently seeing the same decks, consistently keep seeing the same players always making it to the top, if someone goes 3-2 consistently in an event where your expected win rate is 25%, that's something to watch out for. So I would definitely say anytime you see someone wave around CEDH tournament results, take it with at least a little bit of grain of salt.
Yeah, for me, I hate when people look at top 4 of a tournament or the deck that won and then instantly is like, that's it. They cracked the code. This is so good in this meta, blah, blah, blah. Because that just ignores so many factors like what decks were at the tournament, pilot skill, etc. I think what you should be looking at is just overall what sort of decks perform well and made it to like top 16. And it's kind of this same thing that Hire and I have been echoing this whole time, is that mid-range has changed. You don't need to win the game turn 2, but your turn 2 needs to be doing something. It doesn't need to be crazy impressive like dropping a turn 2 Nas, but you need to not just be going land dork, pass, and being like, I did good. I have an extra mana turn 1 or turn 2. You need to really be developing your board and getting a value engine out turn 2 that you're able to use or something along those lines. I think it's just archaic thinking that land dork pass is good or like turn 1 land pass is an acceptable 7. I think what you can take away from this top 16 in this tournament is that you need to mulligan aggressively and you need to actually look at your hand and be like, all right, turn 2, I'm activating Thrasios. Turn 2 is my Rhystic Study. Turn 2 is a wheel into hopefully gas, like something along those lines. Like you don't necessarily need to be winning the game, and I don't want people to think like, oh, turn 2, I need to be dropping the Nas and just winning on the spot. But you need to have a board. And if you don't have a board, if you go to tournaments, you're going to be looking at 3 other people who have boards, and you're going to be losing most of those games. So I think you just need to accept the fact the format is faster and realize mulliganing is a very useful tool, especially when you can just ship back a 7 for free. And make sure you have a game plan where turn 2, turn 3, you have game actions, whether it be interaction, value engine, something. You just need to be doing things and not just sitting back and hoping everyone else is just as slow as you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's a lot of I think maybe a misconception is that tournament decks aren't necessarily like good decks if they do well, and I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that tournament decks that do well, even if they're off meta, do well for a reason. And like, yeah, there's a lot of like limiters to that. And I mean, in a vacuum, it's only really 7 games that you have to win, right? If you win 7 games, you've won the tournament, and that's a small sample size. But it's hard to win 7 games in a row. That's hard to do. And so when I think about this, some of the things I pull out is that, mid-range is really good in an open meta because you can adapt, and you can really, if you build around rule of law, if you build around stacks, and if you have a lot of interaction, you can kind of interact with turbo, you're in a good spot. You're just in a good spot. And as for this episode, as we wrap it up tonight, we would love to hear your thoughts on the tournament. Was there any decks that you wish you saw? Decks that you were surprised to see? Let us know in the comments, because I think that this tournament was really interesting. And I think that there's a lot that it had to offer. I'm going to redo that. Mikey, I'm sorry. As we wrap up tonight's episode, we'd love to hear your thoughts on the tournament. Was there any decks you wish to see? Any decks that you were surprised to see? We'd love to hear any thoughts you might have in the comments.
Thanks again to Mikey for coming on today, and also, of course, TOing our tournament. This tournament never could have gone on anywhere near as well as it did without his help. Mikey, anything you want to say on the way out?
All I have to say is, playing with power, you guys are awesome. Thanks for having me aboard, and stay tuned for what's going to happen at Marchesa. Who knows what that top 16 is going to look like, and maybe we'll do another podcast to cover that one.
Mm-hmm.
Hell yeah. A big thanks to all of our sponsors, TCG Player, Dragon Shield, and viewers and listeners like you on Patreon. If you're watching this on YouTube, give us a comment, like this video, and subscribe if you're already not a subscriber. Make sure if you're listening to give us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast aggregator. You'd be surprised how much it helps. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and more. All links are in the episode notes. That's about wraps it up for this episode of the podcast. Tune in next time when we talk more about our favorite format and our favorite game, Magic the Gathering. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and we will see you next time.